Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Larson, and I lead the Agile Education and Credentialing Program at Scrum Inc. I will be your co-host for today. Please feel free to ask questions at any time using the Q&A function through Zoom, and make sure you stick around for the Q&A. It'll be really great. So with that, I'm really excited for the webinar today because we are going to be talking about something that I'm personally very passionate about. And that is how we together can better prepare the workforce of tomorrow by bringing the world of work into the classroom and the world of learning into the workplace. And I can't imagine any two better people to bring those insights to us. So I have got the fantastic job of getting to introduce you to our stars for today's event, Dr. Jeff Sutherland and Willy Winjnands. Now, as you may know, Jeff is the co-creator of Scrum, which is the most widely used Agile framework. He's the inventor of Scrum at Scale, signatory of the Agile Manifesto, and the founder of Scrum Inc. And Jeff has truly dedicated his life's work to improving the world of work, to helping organizations and individuals to achieve more productive, engaging, and fulfilling work lives. We've also got Willy here, who is the inventor of EduScrum, which is a truly remarkable innovation in Scrum. It lays the foundation for bringing the Agile mindset and these important values and principles into the educational arena so that individuals can take more ownership over their learning journey, become more engaged in the process of learning, and ultimately help shape a more successful, innovative, rewarding, and impactful world for the future. Really excited. Thank you both so much for joining us today and sharing some of your insights and experiences.
Okay, I'm going to do a little introduction to Willy, but let me say something about Scrum before we start. The goal was to create an environment where teams could be really successful, delivering a lot better results with much higher quality. And that means they could have a better life and better jobs. And at the same time, if they could deliver a lot more at lower cost, the customers could get better quality products at less price. And so now the customers are effectively, they're more prosperous. And if you could do that at scale, then all of a sudden you impact the society, and the society grows. And we're seeing this particularly in the Netherlands, where Willy is today. Now, over time, as we've implemented Scrum, there have been certain things that have happened that have really helped Scrum a lot. And in particular, Willy's creation of EduScrum has been really significant because we've done many prototypes of Scrum in education, particularly in universities, project-based Scrum, but it doesn't work anywhere near as well as having the whole educational program run by Scrum, and that's what Willy's going to talk about. So one of my first questions when I went to the Netherlands to visit Willy and his students was, number one, does it work? And Willy has data now over many years showing that for children, mainly high school people, but it's moving down to all the lower grades as well, they finish semesters 6 weeks early and their grades are 20% higher consistently. So clearly it's better. And then I asked the kids, well, is it more fun for the students? And I was in a class and they all screamed, yes. Okay, so clearly Scrum is a lot more fun. And then finally, is the end result more productive? And I was at an Agile conference in the Netherlands recently, and some of the business leaders were saying the children that coming out of Willy's class trained in Scrum are some of the most valuable employees to hire. And they said, frankly, their challenge as a business leader is that if Willy's students find out that their company even smells a little bit like Waterfall, they will not take a job there. So the kids are actually changing the business leaders so they realize they need to be agile to hire the best students who are coming out of Willy's classes. So with that, Willy, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you could take people through EduScrum and what a great process it is.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, that I introduced me. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Noah. Thank you, Jeff, that I experienced Scrum by a friend of mine, by Schuberg Phyllis, where you trained the teachers in 2011. And he explained me Scrum, what he get from you, on one H4 paper. And with this paper, I go into the class and I started with Scrum in my way. And I just said, it was unbelievable what happens in the first day, of course. I'm a teacher, chemistry teacher for 44 years in a high school in the Netherlands. And I take you into the journey about what I'm doing and what I experience, and what I do with a Scrum framework, and I transform it to the EduScrum framework. We do the same, we use the same framework, and we change a little bit of words to make it adjustable for the educational stuff. And these little adjustments are crucial to make it happen. So, you know, the world is changing around us very, very fast. And now for COVID, it is not a question if we want to change, we must change. And it is not about intelligence that you have a high intelligence, but you must be agile, you must be adapt to the situation you have, otherwise you don't survive. So, and when you look at the classroom on the left, black and white picture, the classroom 100 years ago, and you look in a classroom, a lot of classrooms all over the world, you see almost the same picture, and it is changing little bit, step by step. And when you can bring this to your classroom and make students owner of their own learning process and also their personal development, that will be great. So the question is, how can we prepare students for the future with an agile mindset? That is not about Scrum, that is not about EduScrum, that is not about other tools, but with the mindset. So how many of you want to change the difference in education? How many of you want this? So how many of you want motivated students in the classroom? But not for me, I'm making a little adjustment. How many of you want to be enthusiastic, committed employees in your working company? So the first thing is why it is important to learn. Not only about the books from nature or whatever. And then when I, as a teacher or as a company guy, cannot explain why something matters, you cannot expect that the students take you for serious. So that is very important, why you have to do it. So, so it's time to ask what the students want to learn, why they want to learn, and how they want to learn. And the how I come later to it. So we start with the Agile Mindset, where we did the last slide with the onion. And I think you know it. The tools and the processes. Scrum, EduScrum, Kanban, Lean, all kinds of processes. When you go to this, you bring it into practice. Okay, nice, also nice. But then you're coming to the principles. You have to stick to the principles. And you can also adjust the kind of stuff. Then, for me, very, very important, the values, the value of your life, the value of your own person. And then you can become into a mindset, changing your mindset. And the first two tools and practices is about command and control. Then you're going, how do you want to change it? You have to change about your principles of value in schools, in your class atmosphere, and in your company atmosphere. Then, when you go to the next, then you can change your whole learning organization. And when you go to the next, the simple thing is the tools. You can see it, and it is not so powerful. When you go to the next, the mindset, you don't know what people think, but the outcome is very powerful. But it takes time. And the trick is when you do a Scrum training for 2 days, of EduScrum training, and for 2 days or whatever, and you do the trick, then you don't get it and you will fail. So in the beginning, the teachers has to tell you what you have to do and how do you as a student must do the things. Give your homework. So in the second place, it's very important that you explain why the students have to do it. And when you go into the self-organization of your classrooms, of companies, then they decide the why, the what, and the how. And when you reach this point, then you can say, you be Agile, you be Scrum, you be EduScrum, you are be the person. So when you see the values of Scrum, I add some other important values what I use in my classroom: the why, the fun, trust, and safety. We also make an adjustment. And one of my colleagues in Russia, Katerina, make this adjusted and make it especially EduScrum values. It's about the why: ownership, safety, freedom, and fun. And when you go to the fun part, you see my classroom. It is about trust, create a safe atmosphere. Space means not a space in the room, but space in your mind, space in the atmosphere, and give them freedom. Not freedom without borders, but freedom within borders. And when they know it, then you can go for it. In your classroom, that is very important, this kind of values. Are values, are principles? Now, for me, when the value is necessary, it becomes principle. So what we do the first time when I started my classroom, I talk about we have to work the whole year together. So we create our definition of fun. How can we enjoy together when we're working together for the whole class? But they do it also when they work in teams. They create their own definition of fun. Very important to start with. And this will become agreements where I have to stick to it, but also the students. What is EduScrum? EduScrum is working in teams where the students are in charge. The students become more owner of their own learning process, and they work in short iterations. And you go from a teacher-driven situation to a student-driven situation. And when you can ask your students, what do you want to learn? Why do you want to learn? And how do you want to learn it? And give that to the students, that is a process. When you go with a starting point, you start at week 1 and you have to deliver, because we work in schools, in high school where I have the experiences, but also what Jeff already mentioned, the primary schools and also to universities, we work in a whole schedule. So this kind of a starting point and end point, we work in short iterations. And when you do a work, we don't know what people are thinking, what they are doing. And at the end, they delivered something. But like waterfall, they dive on the water and they come up and deliver a little present and see you later. When you work in short iterations in schools after 3 hours, or when you have a whole day work in a school, also possible, maybe one time a day, one time in a day, but that depends on your school schedule. So you work in short iterations, what I say already. And then sometimes you show yourself, you come up and you see like you were going to work like a dolphin. Dolphin show himself, and then you can say, see you soon, after 3 hours of work, after 3 days of work, for instance, but what I say already, your schedule. So every time you deliver a little present. The present can be your personal or team development, can be about the content, depends on what the learning goals will be. So when they're coming up, we know that we call this a kind of a review moment. Review moment, show what you did, what you do since the last 3 days of the last 3 hours. And sometimes I show it in the classroom, sometimes I show it individually to you as a teacher, and you have this kind of stuff. So what you see now is a little adjustment for the golden circle for Simon Sinek. But I changed the middle circle, the red one, into a heart, because the why is in the middle. The why is your heart, it's your passion, you work with. So the important is that the teacher explain in the assignment the why to the students, why you have to do this assignment. And also we have to stick to the curriculum, because we have to listen to the exam examinations of the different schools or universities. So the teacher determines the why and the what, always. But when you want to go in the self-organization for the students, you give it also the why and the what to the students. What I say already, the why and the what is for the students. And the how is from the teams. You don't have to interfere in this kind of stuff. You have to interfere when something went in the wrong way. But normally you let them go and you follow the process. The process not about the content, but on personal and team development. So then we in the industrial age where we come from, the skills about knowledge were very important. So nowadays we can find everything on the internet, in Google or whatever. You can find a lot of tools, and now it is very important to take care for the soft skills. And a lot of people know the 21st century skills. And when you ask me now, what are the 21st century skills? I say, I don't know. I Google them and then I can tell you. But you can bring them to the to 4 C's. The 4 C's of education are communication, are collaboration, are critical thinking, and creativity.
Hey, Willy, can I make a comment? Jessica's suggesting that I might comment on why do we let the team determine how they're going to do it. And in the very first Scrum team, I realized that the managers telling people what to do and how to do it was not very effective. Things were very slow. We weren't getting a good result. So the team has to learn how to build better things. And the only way they can do that is by collaborating together and learning. And that learning process is what gives you great stuff and gives it faster, because it trains the team and this communication, the critical thinking, the collaboration, and the creativity that you need to have great results. So the how of the team is important. It actually is the engine that drives the creativity, which leads to the result.
Yeah, and what you say is fully correct, fully 100% correct, Jeff, what you're saying here, that this is when you give the self-organizing team the ownership of their own learning process. We have to take care of the curriculum, of the assignment, but when they are really in charge, they learn from each other. And I have a simple tool for myself, rule for myself: ask 3 before me. So when there is a question, first ask your team. And then if it is not possible for resolve within the team, then you can ask me. But otherwise you go to the next part of it. So when we go on with this, we have about team building. In Scrum, you work with cross-functional teams. We have not cross-functional, we have cross-functional team, but not on expertise, but on qualities and skills. So at the beginning, the students don't know yet where they are aware of, what kind of qualities and skills they have. Then we let them write down their qualities and skills, 5, mostly 5 out of 20. And then they're going to work together in part 3. And then they discover a lot of different qualities they have, and they use it, and maybe they discover it. And then part 4, we do a kind of retrospective. Retrospective is about the content, of course, always, but also on their own development as a person and what they become aware of. And next to that, also what is happening within the team. And to do also the adjustments, how can we improve ourselves next time. So this is a kind of an example what we use in the classroom. You can use it digitally, but in the classroom, we use a very simple paper, and we let them fill them in. This kind of paper, we let fill this paper, what you see on the board. And then they will mark some dots on it. What are their qualities? So you see an example, for instance, in the first column. Why 3 columns? People ask sometimes, why 3 columns? Because in the first column is the column about what you quality and think you have now and what you want to use. The second column is after a period of 6 weeks, for instance, for 3 hours a week, you can look what kinds of qualities do you discover, or what qualities do you use. So we go into their mind, what they discover. Next to that is very important what I'm going to explain now about team building. And when you don't explain to students why they have to work in teams, why that is so important, I use the metaphor from Patrick Lencioni, and with a little adjustment. So trust is the foundation of working together in relationship. What kind of relationship? Then how to communicate. Communication is a very hard part for students, but also for us adults. Communicate in a very good way. Communication must be open, and sometimes there will be a conflict, and conflict is okay because you have to talk about it, make it transparent. Then that is the base where you have to work on, both. What happens after this strong base, with a good team, with trust and open communication, then you get a feeling. The feeling is about you feel committed to this team, and you feel that you are accountable to this team. And this is about your feeling. You don't have to learn commitment. You don't have to learn responsible. They learn because they are joining a team. And then at the end, the result is always good. When you have stick to these 5 values or principles. Then next to that, your self-trust of the students will be growing. They can be themselves. They may say what they want by themselves in this safe environment. They feel self-committed. They feel self-responsible. And sometimes they have to do their own tests. They feel they get for their own tests. But when you work together, you have to do one thing left behind a little bit. And that is, I hope it works. Yes, your ego. When your ego is too heavy, like this picture, then you have to shrink it a little bit. And I hope it works. Yes, it works. Yeah, thank you. So the ego must be a little bit shrinking a little bit. So you have, as your ego is big and you are a leader, give space and room to your other students too. So
Willy, I want to comment on, when I talk to your students, the effect that this has on them. I talked to some of the teams and they said, in the beginning, you have this process of choosing up the teams, which maybe you'll explain later, but they said initially they would choose their friends, and then they found that didn't work very well. And they said, we need a cross-functional team to work well, and particularly we need someone that's good at visualization and planning. That's one of the most important things. And the people that are best at that is usually the really quiet people that really think a lot, that are usually the ones that are left out.
Yeah, of course.
But they find that is a really important person. And I talked to one of your Scrum Masters who said, I'm an autistic kid. 2 years ago, I couldn't even talk to anybody. Yeah. Now I'm a Scrum Master, and he explains what he's done with the team, and the kid he's become a great communicator.
Yeah. Yes,
I'm like, wow, this is a human growth capability that is incredibly awesome. You actually have to see it to believe it. You should go to visit Willy if you ever get to the Netherlands.
Yeah, but this story, what you tell, Jeff, that is really incredible what you see in my class with the students. They grow really in a very hard way. It's beautiful. So I call this the tree of trust. Not Patrick Lencioni's pyramid. We changed it to tree of trust. What happens last year in the US when I did a training there. So, the pillars of Scrum. Everybody knows the pillars of Scrum: transparency, adaptation, and inspect. The word inspect is in the Netherlands, maybe in other countries, okay, but in the Netherlands not so a good word. So transparency is okay. Then adaptation, and then the word review. I changed the word inspect into review mode. More softly, but the same impact with a nicer word for the students. And a house with pyramid is built on a very important thing, this trust. So when we go to the next slide, you see project, put it in a context. You talk about subjects. That is old school thinking. Old school thinking is analyze several kind of subjects and put them together. But when you fantasize a kind of a project where all kind of, not all, but a lot of subjects will be combined, then you can really make your subject, make them together and put them in a context. The context, what I mean, put it in the context, give them a why. Why do I have to learn it? Why do I have to do it? So this sign, what I do now, I steal it a little bit from Jeff a long time ago, from when he's practitioner, an Aikido practitioner, and I use this, and I'm an Aikido practitioner too, but Sangen is a 3 symbols from the Shinto religion, about a square, a triangle, and a circle. So we use this to frame our work. So when you see the square, it is about what the teacher determines about what is happening then. He determines the what you have to learn. Then about the subject or project. Then the other part is the focus. The focus can be on the subject of project. And sometimes the focus is on the student. Sometimes this focus is on the team. Depends what happenings during the process in the class, what happens there. And sometimes you go from the student to the subject or project. And this circle, we combine here, the circle is for the dynamics, sometimes left, sometimes counterclockwise. Depends on what you are doing here. So when I explain a project, a big project like a mountain to my students, I really draw a mountain. This is your mountain where you have to break down in boulders. And the mountain and boulders is a metaphor for me for the epic and the stories. And the sand, what you see there, is about the tasks. So I explain really in this way the assignment to my students. And then they understand what they are doing it. And when they are doing it, I use also the stories with the very important and powerful words, as, want, so that, about their own project, about their own boulders, what they create. This is a metaphor I use. Then I bring this into the process of EduScrum. You see it here on the board, but I take you now into this process. And you see the customer will give something to the product owner. The product owner in this case is the teacher, but the teacher is also a Scrum Master. And that is normally forbidden, but we make these things, two things together. So, but the role of a Scrum Master will diminish. When the students become more self-organized and they become their own Scrum Masters, that will, then your role as a manager, as a teacher will slow down. So you give it to your students. And the team captain, I use the word Scrum Master or EduScrum Master. I change the word into team captain because a master give a lot of bossy kind of explanation to the people. Mastery, a kind of a work I love, but when you want to say to me, I'm a master, I'm not a master. I'm also a student too. I'm a student. I learn from my grandchildren. I learn from everybody. So I don't want to say I'm a master. So therefore I change the word in team captain. Also acceptable, more acceptable for the students. Then we go into the next slide. Sorry, not next. Sorry, something went wrong. So, sorry for that. We call this the whole short cycles, when you remember the working like a dolphin, and it called a big sprint for 7 weeks. 7 weeks, 3 hours a week, as an example. Then we do sometimes dolphin coming up, the review moment. And you have some review moment in this case. And at the end, we do a retrospective on 3 parts. The content, of course, on the personal development and team development. And for me personally, as a passionate teacher, personal development is for me the highest grade, the highest priority. When students know who they are and where they want to become to, the learning stuff is easy to eat. So we all put this thing on a flip like this, what you see behind me, a flip with it, with here, and I changed a little bit because of the COVID. We have a big project in Chile for where we teach 300, 400 students now, and I am supported with, I think, 15 or 20 EduScrum teachers in the world, all over the world. We enter also not only the definition of fun, we also enter the definition of doing, not definition of done. Definition of doing are working agreements for the students. How can we approach our work that the task is done, which means that which meets the celebration criteria. Oh yeah, the celebration criteria. Translation, acceptance criteria. My students don't like the word acceptance. So how do you want to change it? In 2017, they want to change it in celebration. Okay, we celebrate. And that's they also use it in the definition of fun. When we end kind of a project or a story or whatever in a good way, we can celebrate this kind of stuff. And when we were in Chile, we have problems with communication. The Spanish, fully online, with students not working together. How can we create teams? How can we make teams and working in a good way together? So we created, it's not yet on this board, we create a definition of communication. So what are the communication rules when we are online? Also, you can have communication rules in your classroom or in your working environment, but that is much easier. But online, you have to stick to some rules. So that is a very important part of this definition of communication that happens in March this year of the project. So we also introduce a wall of failure. In school, it is forbidden to make failures. So for me, my students say, I make failures. Make failures and learn from failures. When you make a failure and you don't learn from it, you don't, then it is a real failure. But when you have a failure and put all the failures in a place on your board, make it transparent, then everybody can learn from your failures and make it transparent. Next step, this is the negative, could be the negative part, but it's not the negative part. Also, students can be proud of what you're doing. So show it, put a sticky note on, what are you proud of? So name it. So when you go to the simple rules, when you have to explain, and that is important, stick to the rules, do everything or not, don't leave a part away. That's what Jeff Lemmy teach me a lot of years ago. Everything you have to do, the whole flip, the whole ceremonies, the whole artifacts, you have to do it. Don't leave one thing behind. So shoe means stick to the rules, follow the rules. In the half phase, they become a little more self-organized, not yet full. They can break the rules and adjust it to them. Next step, when they are more and more self-organized, can happen in end of the school year, can also happen in 2 or 3 years ago, and that happens. And that happens in 2016 with 5 students. Sorry, it was 7 students, and we take these students in the self-organizing team to Stuttgart, and Jeff was present in this event. Jeff, you remember it?
Yeah.
It was a great session where students sent me even away that I do the presentation, but they start the presentation and not me. And I must fully trust them to go to this next step. So we also use, I go very fast to do this planning poker stuff. Everybody with Scrum knows how that works. We do the same with the students. Then you see here what students are doing with creating their task, and also doing the planning poker stuff in these pictures. They use apps for it. They use their fingers. They use planning poker cards, whatever they are needed to. Then when they calculate all the points, they put this on the board. They draw a run-up chart. And you see on this picture a kind of a stand-up. Beginning of the classroom or view in the classroom. They put the stickies from busy to done and going to the next part. And here you see a working class where the students are working. The run-up chart, yes, also translation of the name. Burn down chart in 2017, same year, same class, also the same class, changed the burn down into a run-up chart. Same what we do the same thing, but one of shots I find it more positive. Okay, we change it after listening to my students too. So here you see what the students doing after in the stand up for 5 minutes, max 5 minutes, and they're going into the next step, or putting the sticky notes, say negotiate about what they are going to do, and then at the end we're doing the coming back to the retrospective. This is a kind of an example how you can do a retrospective. You put your qualities in the circle, the yellow, the blue, the yellow, the blue, the red, and the green in the circle. When you use much, you put it in the center. When you less, you put it on the outside. When you discover, you put it in the circle on the level, how many you use it. So this is about self-reflection of your students. And what Jeff already mentioned, the results are going higher. And not even, sometimes not the first iteration. Then is even, the average is even the same or even little lower, because I don't teach anymore so much. Sometimes I teach, but the most I keep my mouth shut, and the students do it by themselves.
Let me comment, Willie, because I was amazed when I was there. The bell rings.
Yeah.
The students run into the room. They run to the wall with their team, and they have a daily meeting. And then they rush to their desk and they start working, and Willie's just sitting there saying nothing. It was amazing. And the level of enthusiasm with that was also amazing. So I think this is what I hear from some of the teachers in the Netherlands, that this is the biggest challenge for a traditional teacher to actually become a product owner who is, you know, framing what they need to do, but then not giving an hour-long lecture, right? You don't do that anymore.
No. What you say about lecturing, sometimes I lecture for 10 minutes, and sometimes that means not that I do nothing anymore, but my role is changing from teacher to coach or even servant leader. I open the door and the rest happens. Yeah. That is what happens in time. And but I have to stay, there's a rule of the students, I must stay in the class because sometimes they need me. And it must be direct present. I cannot go drinking coffee, they don't accept it.
The other thing I noticed is Willie is a Aikido sensei. So he doesn't want to be called a master, but still have a dojo,
yeah,
Willie. And his Aikido mastery, I see him using in his classroom. So even though he's not saying anything, if the children start moving in a way that's not productive, he's kind of immediate there coaching them into a more focused behavior. So it's not that the teacher's doing nothing. They're there and they're making it all work, but they're getting the kids to do it.
Yeah. What you say, Jeff, I work hard, especially the first 3 or 4 weeks of a school year, to set them in the right mode. It takes a lot of energy. First 3 or 4 weeks. And after that, I can relax, not in the cinema mode, but I can do it in another way. Coaching, personal development, this kind of stuff. And the results, the marks will raise, but also the personal, as a person, you raise. So here you see some of my happy kids. And the picture from these girls, the girls, yes, you see these girls in the pink one, black one. This was the class where we get a lot of results. A kind of also, I didn't know the name at that time, kind of a Scrum Scale situation that students going to do a lot of experimental stuff without me. So this is a compass. When you know EduScrum and you know Scrum and you use this compass, that's the only thing you need when you want to teach. Everything what you want is in it. When it is not in it, please put it in it. About trust, visual feedback, collaboration, and it is really, the North Star. The star is the first compass in the world. So, and the why is in the middle. For me, the why is in the middle. Always why you want to do it. The 5 whys of the retrospective, very powerful too. So this is a talk, how can you from prescriptive to iterative, from content to culture. Okay, you can read it. You can also get it from our website. It takes too much time now to go to this text. So I go to my last slide, and I love this slide.
Beautiful.
I love it. I love this really text. You can go home, but before you have to make the environment in a good way.
You know, I just want to say that this is so important. You know, I spend a lot of my time doing training with adults, and a lot of the training is just trying to change the way they've been taught is kind of this industrial revolution, machine-based, systematic specialization. Everybody's in their own box. Nobody's creative. They just, you know, do it by the numbers. And now we have to convert them in the modern world to be creative, experiential, trying things out. And that shift is so hard for adults. And if we get this into the classroom at a very young age, and the kids come out already knowing this, they are going to be much more successful in their working lives. Their organizations are going to be much more successful, and the society and the country is more successful. And I really see this in the Netherlands. There are companies that have moved their development to the Netherlands because they say, hey, Scrum is twice as good in the Netherlands. For the same price, I get twice as much done. I'm just going to move everybody to the Netherlands. I've seen that. It's amazing.
They don't have to go to the Netherlands anymore because now I'm spreading EduScrum in 30 countries, 32 countries already.
Yeah.
And also in the USA with Christian Wunderler is great and growing process. In Russia I trained, I think, together with my Russia team, 900 teachers already to be teachers in EduScrum. There's a lot. South America is booming, India is booming, China is booming. Europe is booming, so it is coming up now. And what you say, when we can create students from the primary schools, the high schools, to universities, to get another mindset, it's much easier to go into the company and they are already in that good mindset. And some of my students, maybe until now, 10 students now, little, they get trained by me by EduScrum in the school. And they get a job because they say, in my school days, I work with EduScrum. Oh, wow. So explain. So they get a job because they were already prepared and by their way of thinking, and they know how Scrum or Agile EduScrum works, and especially the way of Agile.
Well, Jeff, Willy, we have just about 15 minutes to go, and we have received a lot of interesting questions over the last 45 minutes. So maybe we turn our attention there and see if we can't get through some of those. So the first one here is taking us back to something I think you mentioned earlier, Willy, and then Jeff, you commented on, which is the role of the teacher, or the teacher rather, taking over the role of product owner in an EduScrum context. And the question is around what is the product?
The product, officially school project in the old school thinking way, we still are have to work on the curriculum exam stuff. The product is the learning goals, what you have to learn, and we have to stick to it. What I do with my students, I give them a why, and they work on the project in their own way. That's one of the learning outcomes and the products. The other products is you cannot see it directly, but directly you see the personal development and the team development of the students. And how can I make this visible? Because they write this thing down in a portfolio. They create a portfolio about the personal development when they start in the first year with their own way of working. And in years, they have a very beautiful story about the self-development stuff.
Yeah,
so
my view of EduScrum is that the product is actually the student. That's my experience actually visiting.
Yeah,
Those
agree.
kids are transformed.
Yeah.
And it's really a beautiful thing.
So thinking about this approach to education, and maybe this one is for you, Jeff, how have you seen this working inside of an organization for talent development, that kind of thing?
Well, I think that one of the things that Willy has created for the students is really looking at skills and talent and actually creating learning objectives around building better capabilities. I don't think we do that a lot in industry, and we could really benefit from talent, talent creation, better talent building. And we could learn from EduScrum on how to do that better with adults.
All right, these next few are kind of for you, Willy, I think. People are really curious about what suggestions you might be able to provide for getting administrations within, the school systems aligned or seeing the benefits and being willing and open-minded to adopting these principles and practices.
Yeah, that is a very simple question, or a good question, but hard to answer. Not hard to answer, hard to implement EduScrum or Agile Mindset into school. In the beginning, when I started in 2011, 2012, my first training, I took everybody in my trainings. And now I only want teachers in my training who have already open mindset, Agile mindset a little bit maybe. And when I train a school, I want also one of the team members, the board members of the principal into my training stuff, because they support our teachers, okay. But they must also feel and experience what happens with you when you go into the EduScrum way of working. So, and then you get a support. The teachers see, hey, my boss is also doing in the same training that gives a good value about relationship. And then when you have 10 people or 15 people in a school, and don't push them, then when other people want to join, look in the classroom, look what happens, what Jeff saw in my classroom. You see students in the classroom, not to convince them but show what's happening in the classroom dynamics, and then step by step the people will coming into your training stuff. And then I can say, when a school asks me for 50 teachers, can you train the school? Yes, I can train the whole school, there's no problem. But I don't do it because it will fail, because the mindset is not right yet, open for 50 people at the same time. So give me 10 best students with the teachers with the open mindset, Agile mindset. And when I train them, then they train the others. And you get support from me or coaching from me, that is another part. That is cheaper for you and better, because learning by doing it and learning by explaining to the others, you learn the most. But implementing, do it in a slow way with a handful of good people, and then going step by step. When you do it too fast, you will fail. When you want to do it as a trick, you do Agile or do Scrum or do EduScrum, it will fail. And when you take the time for that, and it takes time, then you be Agile. You can be EduScrum. You can adjust every time.
The value proposition for the administration is just as it is in industry. If we could achieve our learning objectives 6 weeks earlier in the semester, and the grades were 20% higher, would you be interested in that?
Yeah.
Well, in the US, schools are monitored by grade performance. Every school system in the United States should be jumping at this, but they're not aware. If they were really aware, they would all be wanting to try this out.
And it's interesting too, the approach you mentioned, Willy, of, let me talk to your 10 most excited people and kind of create this sense of pull and interest from there organically. Because I think, and to an earlier point you made, kind of drawing a parallel to Scrum at Scale, this is certainly the approach I've heard you, Jeff, recommend in industry, is to really start with a small group. So perhaps you could comment on sort of that parallel.
Well, what Willy's doing is exactly what we found in Scrum Scale. You need to start with a small group of people, volunteers who are ready to do this. You need to demonstrate success in the environment, because there are things always in the environment that are blockers that need to be removed. So that then when you have that success, then you can replicate that success. That's Scrum at Scale. That's exactly what Willy has, figured out independently. This is the way to do it.
So this next question is a big one potentially, but this is around kind of how to do this in an online environment that we find ourselves in. because of course teaching online is challenging for all parties involved, from the student, getting them engaged and excited, to the instructor, to even the parents. So could you speak a little bit to how you've overcome those challenges, and to the extent that you have found ways or techniques for incorporating the parents into an EduScrum experience?
Yes, when COVID came in March, when we had a lockdown for the schools, and we cannot travel anymore, so I was stressed. How can I proceed? What kind of tool would I go to use? How can I do my same thing what I do in my classroom? Now I use it. Now I use a PowerPoint to go to the stuff. But in my teaching stuff, I never use a PowerPoint. Never in my classroom. This maybe when I can tell you this, the tenth of maybe 10th PowerPoint I use in a keynote. But what we did, what I have to search for, what kind of tool we use. Now you can use a lot of different tools for online trainings. Use as simple tools as possible. What I like to use is Jamboard or Google Docs, Zoom as a presentation, and that is little bit enough for me. Miro, you can use Miro, Trello, and also kind of other communication points. And I make it interactive, not only sending out, but I let the people work. Think 10 minutes of explanation or something like that, going in the breakout room, coming back, do your review moment, and going back to the next step. We break down the whole stuff in small pieces.
Let me make another comment, because in the Slack or in the chat, there's a question about discipline problems. And what I learned at Willy's school is that most of the discipline problems went away because of the process. Can you talk a little bit about that, Willy?
Yeah, that is a good point. The management of the process about managing your classroom or other problems. We talk about definition of fun in the beginning. Definition of fun is for the whole class as a kind of agreement. But in the teams have to talk about definition of doing and definition of communication in a respectful way. And the students know exactly where they talk about. When they are 6 years old, 7 years old, when they are 10, 15, 20 years old, they talk about it. So they make agreements in the part of the definition of doing, definition of communication, definition of fun. The left part of the flap is about agreements, your stories, your celebration criteria, and your communication way of working. That is very important till you give the value of working together within the teams. This is very, very, very important.
There's also a question on, can we use this in corporate training in the DoD? I know Willy, our German EduScrum trainers, you know, Peter,
Yeah.
and Elisa, I think they use this type of training in all their training with adults. They use an EduScrum kind of approach.
Yeah, I think what you say, Jeff, is that when you use the good things about EduScrum, about personal development, and also personal development for adults is also very, very important, because what you say already, in the old schools, they go for the marks, they do the job. Not only 15% of the people love their jobs, 20% of the people hate their jobs. In between, there are gray mass, or people are in between. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't like it. So if we can create in this way of working, become aware of yourself, and then you know where you go for it, and you choose your own learning path. I work now in a school where the students choose their own learning path to become a professional. They can use their own building blocks.
Several people have asked, you know, how do I get involved in this? How can I best support the growth of EduScrum and this initiative? Maybe you could talk a little bit about how the people on the line can get involved and what we can all do together to make this.
Now I must take care of what I'm saying, because normally I say to my people, always I respond within 24 hours. And I try, otherwise, when I don't respond, the mail or the info is not coming up. So you can go to the website for me, eduscrum.nl, and then I will reply, or you go to LinkedIn, you can reply also to me. Then we go into the Zoom contact, we special details, and we can work out how we can spread the word. In the 30 countries where I am there, I have representatives In the US, I have a representative in Russia, in South America, different countries, Argentina, Brazil, Europe, several countries. So I bring you in contact with the person, the representative there. And then we go to the next step. And we have a kind of EduScrum learning path from to become a student, teacher, practitioner, and trainer too.
And what about for people who are not educators, but
yes.
like parents?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes, normally. Yeah, thank you for this question, Jessica. Before, since 3 months ago, 2 months ago, I don't know, we only train teachers because teachers understand the language of the teacher in the classroom. The teachers don't accept people from the companies. That is stupid idea, but okay. That is the way of a lot of teachers thinking. And therefore we had doing an international training where people from US, people from Israel, people from Argentina, all over the world coming together, and we do a training. And that was one of the best trainings ever, because the company guys learn from teachers, teachers learn from the company guys. And for me, everybody is a teacher. Also, when you're not an official teacher, everybody is a teacher. So, and Jessica, I know you are in this training and you have experienced what the benefits was working together with people from Israel or Australia or whatever, what the outcomes were in this kind of stuff. So yes, now I say, please come in, company guys and company people, when you have passion for education and for your kids and for your education stuff, to change the educational world, and it will change.
Great. Well, I think that's probably all the time that we have for questions, but before we go, I just really like to thank both of you once again, Jeff and Willy, for taking your time to share some of these insights and for the great and fascinating conversation and presentation. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody on the call today who attended or who watches this after the fact. Hope it was valuable to you and hope that we see you next time.
Thank you very much, Jessica, Noah, and Jeff for bringing me, making me know that Scrum exists.
Yeah. Thank you, Willy, for doing this. Great.
It must start somewhere. You started years ago, and I picked it up in 2011, and so it happens. And we can do it alone. We do it together.
Absolutely. All right. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.